This market sucks. Hey everyone, and welcome back. Vancouver Life Real Estate Podcast here, Dan and Ryan. And yeah, you heard it right. This market sucks. Now, what do I mean? All we hear about is record-breaking sales, everything blowing out in 1 week, everybody wins, right? There is so much more going on behind the scenes there. I think we'll start off with the obvious: buyers. It is brutal with a capital B for brutal for buyers, for brutal buyers right now. Excuse me. I think we'll give a couple examples. You got to think the metrics right now, they're so in favor of sellers, as you may have noticed if you're paying attention to this market, and they have been for close to 2 years now. So for 2 years, it's been a seller's market. And as a buyer, that's very, very tough. Namely, if you want to buy a home, well, guess what? Quite often, the norm right now is at least 10 other people want to buy that exact same home. And that's who you're competing against. It's not like in a balanced market where it's essentially you are trying to buy a home from a seller. And that's where the negotiations happen. Now it's you battling against 10, 20, sometimes 30 other buyers. And you're just essentially leapfrogging each other. And that's how we keep hearing these insane and ridiculous stories about how these homes are selling for $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 over asking sometimes. I mean, just yesterday, one of our team members had to go up against 25 offers at 1.7 million, and the home sold for $600,000 over asking price. I mean,
My goodness.
it is so tough as buyers, and we sympathize immensely with all of them because we work with them every day. Ryan and I were both buyers a year ago and had to win in multiples. So we know what's going on up there. So let's just kind of maybe rip through why it is so bad for buyers. And then we're going to talk about why it's so bad for everybody else involved in the market as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm kind of getting at a point now where it's been pinned for 2 years to the absolute top in a seller's market. And I think there's so much buyer fatigue now taking place. I mean, we've had stories. I think we spoke to a realtor, Dan, not too long ago. Dan was doing a deal with a realtor, and him and his clients went offering on over 31 properties before they actually landed their 32nd. And that, to me, I mean, what kind of a buying environment would you otherwise buy anything in like that? You know what I mean? It's getting to a point here where, and I'm kind of interested to see maybe how this goes, because we've got looming interest rate hikes, but if we keep going down the road of buyer fatigue, and buyers just saying, well, I'm just going to start taking this wait and see approach, it's going to have an interesting effect on interest rates too. Because if buyers decide, hey, this is too gnarly, I'm going to step back, I'm going to try in 3 or 6 months or something like that, and then we ratchet up interest rates and then people stop buying, well, that could be an interesting scenario, right? But you still got to look at the fundamentals, and the fundamentals are such that we have just so many more buyers than we have available property. And I just don't, at the macro level, see that changing. The environment for buying might change a little bit, but I don't know, Dan. I don't see it getting a whole lot better very quickly anyways.
Well, and two sort of comments to those points there. The first being, yeah, imagine having an emotional connection to 31 homes
Oh,
and losing every single one. Like it's so painful. And again, this is a good
yeah.
agent. This isn't a
Yeah.
rookie or by any means. They would have been putting forward strong offers, and
Yeah.
just you could imagine what that's like, that emotional roller coaster to be like, okay, this is the one, and like, dang, wow,
No,
18
it's
we've
not.
lost. Like, okay, let's try again.
I mean, how do you
It's
pick up after that?
brutal. And the second comment, well, yeah, waiting for the downturn. I think we've both, unfortunately, very unfortunately, seen and had past clients that thought that they would just wait a few more months for things to calm down before they got
Yeah.
back in.
Yeah.
And now we're talking that was 30, 40% ago, meaning
Yeah.
they were certain that the market was going to crash. They were holding on just a bit longer, and they were certain they'd have more buying power in 3 to 4 months. And then the market just kept doing what the market has done for the last 2 years. And now they are completely priced out. They have no ability to catch up. I mean, like we talked
Yeah.
about on our last pod, homes in the month of January, excuse me, in the month of February are going up $2,000 a day. You can never catch up to that. It's impossible. Now, yes, there will be a coming correction of some form, but will it take us back to 1990 prices? Not a chance.
No,
No. So
no,
that's tough for buyers too, right? To think they're timing the market just by waiting longer, and that's another thing that makes this market suck.
yeah, I completely agree, man. And you know, that's where the buyers get their exhaustion from. It's from that emotional connection to the property they're trying to buy, right? And then, you know, enter the frustration, and then, you know, and we're dealing with it is one conversation to talk about it from the perspective of money and how you get into the market and how expensive it is. But when you remove that and you talk about all the memories and you talk about building a life inside of a home, um, you know, there's that other element of it too, right? And you know, and Dan and I will be the first to tell you that, you know, yes, we trade real estate, but at the end of the day, you know, we're really helping people with their hopes and dreams, and seeing buyers, you know, continue to get crushed. It's demoralizing, and it's hard, and it's really hard for us to provide guidance in an environment where, you know, they just have to fight, and ultimately, you know, the buck has to stop with policy decisions, you know, and that's kind of what's led us here, you know. And again, to Dan's point, is it going to correct massively in any particular way? I don't see that happening. And you look at the next 3 years, and the, you know, government of Canada is predicting between 440 and 460,000 new permanent residents every year for the next 3 years. Right? I mean, that's nearly 1.5 million people that are going to arrive in the next 3 years. And we're not, again, building anywhere near the quotas needed to reach that, right? To bring balance to the market. I wonder, honestly, Dan, if government needs to start putting quotas on, you know, municipalities to produce certain amounts of homes per year. It's just getting to a point where I'm, you know, I don't have the answer anymore.
Well, that leads to the most recent headline here, where government's looking at taking away powers from municipalities because they aren't hitting these quotas when they're talking about things like rezoning and making densification possible.
Yeah.
So it's gotten
Yeah.
to that level where they're just, the government's realizing the smaller governments aren't doing what it takes to solve this problem.
It's not
And
just a money
they may
problem.
step in.
You can't just keep throwing tax dollars at it, right? And you can't just keep taxing more buyers, more demand. It doesn't work. I mean, we've got like 15 taxes and, you know, prices are at their all-time highs. So it's not working.
And inventory is all
It's
time
a,
low.
yeah, it's a function of supply and demand. It always has been. So we need to build faster, way faster. And especially, you know, the economy needs the replenishment of new immigrants. It does, right? We've got probably the biggest part of our economy, the baby boomers, that are going into retirement, right? And so we need to fill that gap, right? And we need to do that to maintain our economy and to maintain the prices that everyone has, you know, paid and bought into. We need the people. So the immigration side of it's not wrong. It's just we're not preparing for it on the other end, not like we need to.
Imagine the buyer process right now. And I think, oh, sorry, just more to your point there, Ryan. Yeah, that's also why the market sucks. We don't see a solution. Nobody
No.
does. They've been trying to
Yeah.
fix this for 20 years, and yet
Yeah.
it feels like we are further away today from a solution than ever before. And yeah, like
Yeah.
you said, there's one side of the government saying more and more people, more and more population, and the other side is saying no more homes. They're not even talking to each other. So of course it's going to create a massive problem. And that sucks. That's part of what makes the market suck. And
Well,
you got to
there's
think.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say we're not done.
Well, you got to think about.
It's, you know, go ahead.
All right, all right. So sorry. Think about the buyer process right now, especially for first timers. The conversations we have are like this. Okay, you're new and you're qualified. Awesome. Let's go look at a house. You found something you love. Awesome. Let's go have a look. We show up and there's a lineup of 40 people outside the door. We get in, we get to see it for 15 minutes, and then we
Maybe.
leave. Maybe, yeah. And then they make a decision then and there. Okay, I'm making $1 million decision, for example, on a home I've seen for 15 minutes. There's not even appointments available to go and see it again. Very hard to book an inspector to get that pre-inspection done. And of course, you know, you can imagine an inspection is not inexpensive, 400 or 500 bucks.
Yeah.
Imagine doing that 31 times.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't be able to buy the same house after.
Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
so some buyers are making the dangerous decision of waiving an inspection.
Mm-hmm.
Something that we obviously don't advise. There are the odd properties that it can be done, and that's case by case. But for the most part, inspections are almost always done or almost should
Yeah.
be done.
Yeah.
So, you know, seeing those get waived is very terrifying to see. And again, most of our clients don't. But it's a pressured environment for buyers. And like I said, you know, 2 days later, maybe you've read strata docs and you've done all the due diligence you can in advance, and you're ready to go subject free because you have almost zero chance without going subject free. And then, you know, you put your offer in, and maybe you win and you're like, oh my God, great. Or maybe you lose 10, 15 times in a row. But
Or
just,
Dan, even if you win and you go, oh my God, I've got to pay for this now.
yeah.
You know, there's that too, right? I mean, this let's be honest. I mean, at the end of the day, some people are going to feel, you know, they awful about their purchase because they paid so much for it, but they have no option to back out of it because it's either get it or be homeless.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's dire in my opinion.
Yeah, it's crisis. Okay, so we know it sucks for buyers, for sure. It's a challenge. Now, obviously, buyers often end up getting a home, and that's great, but the path to get there is incredibly arduous right now. But
Yeah.
what about sellers? Sellers have it easy, right? They just list, they sell over ask, it's done in a week. What could possibly be tough for a seller right now?
Till they have to buy somewhere.
They often do, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, we all need a place to live, right? And so unless you're exiting the market completely, this problem is going to come the seller's way as well, right? So for many different people sell their homes for all different kinds of reasons. But I've noticed in particular, I don't know if it's been in maybe the last 6 weeks in particular, but sellers are definitely on that greedy side now. They've really moved into that. And you know, when we're looking at other investments, we often look at the fear and greed indexes, right, which help us understand the behavior of buyers or sellers. And when you have excessive greed in the marketplace, it's really an indication of froth. You know, and people are doing unreasonable things to have to get a home. And I'm just kind of getting to a point here where, again, you know, if you're a seller, great. But if you're a buyer on the other end of that sell, then even this might not be a great time, you know, because you're going to put yourself in that world of hurt. Yeah, you're going to get a fabulous number for your property, right? But where do you go?
That is just it. And as we hit the peak here, um, the headlines are going to remain for a while about, you know, everything selling over ask and selling for these exorbitant numbers. And what that creates, because we lived through this in 2017, 18, 19, is sellers love to hold on to that dream. Not that they love to, but they do, understandably. So as the market turns and as prices start to go down, they have a hard time understanding or wrapping their heads around, the new environment. And so, you know, they expect these prices. And then of course, when they don't hit and people start seeing offers under ask, you again sort of have this bit of a greed mentality, and it takes a long time for that mentality to shift into realizing where they actually stand today. And yes, that's the job of the agent to help them understand true market value. But it can be a hard concept because all you've heard for the last, well, almost 20 years here, but especially the last two, is that selling's easy or going over ask. Mm-hmm. So it gets to be a little bit dangerous too for sellers that they don't recognize current market situations when they do shift.
Yeah, and that's problematic culturally speaking too. I mean, if you think about it, you know, if people have this misunderstanding that markets only ever go up, somebody will eventually be left holding the bag. Markets do not just go up. They don't. I mean, and now you're looking at things like, you know, war breaking out between Russia and Ukraine. We're going to have $100 oil again right now. I mean, I think it was only 2 years ago, Dan, it was like $7 a barrel, right? It's now 100. So, you know, there's a lot of market forces at play. I mean, I read, one of my favorite authors is Ray Dalio. And he says one of the biggest reasons why people cannot predict what happens in the unfolding of the economy is because there's so many moving pieces and we are unsure of the impact of those moving pieces, right? And don't think that that's not going to happen. Um, you know, look at the stock market. It's been tanking. I mean, it had a decent day yesterday, but it's been tanking lately, right? And it's getting worse because of this crisis in the Ukraine. Well, if a lot of people have money tied up in the stock market and they intended on pulling that money out to put it into real estate, well, now they're not going to do that because they're not going to sell on a loss, right? So what is that? How does that impact our market? People have money all over the place. So there are external forces at play right now. And to think that a market is just going to go up is silly. If you get a good deal and you're selling your property, you should think about moving on, right? Conversely, if you're a buyer, again, don't buy for the short run, right? Buy for the long run. So if you're buying, stick to that long-term plan.
Definitely. We saw that in 2016, 17 as well, where things just felt like they were going up forever and people got caught, especially buying pre-sales,
Yeah.
as they were hearing all the stories about, oh yeah, you just flip the paper, you can just assign stuff and make 100 grand in 6 months. And while that was happening, the people that bought at the top often could not complete when the market dipped 15% and hit bottom.
Yeah.
So, don't, like Ryan said, don't ever buy real estate to think it's a quick flip. You have to have multiple exit strategies in the case of a market downturn.
Mm-hmm.
So, don't just be realistic.
To that point, Dan, I remember even I think it was 2017, I think it was 2018, maybe. Burnaby was a great example of that, where you had a number of pre-sales that came to market, 4 years before they were ready, and they sold out. People were assigning them. People were making a ton of money. And then when they actually got built and people wanted to sell them, they were selling them for a loss. Right. I mean, so don't think that, it can't happen in real estate. It can, right? And money is really, really cheap right now. That's going to change to some degree, right? Whether it maintains, I don't know. That's this. There's so many moving pieces right now. It's hard to know. And the last piece I'll bring up with sellers right now and the inventory issue that we have is because they don't want to enter this buying environment, they're actually holding on to their property. So they are deciding, I am not selling my property right now because I can't buy something. Therefore, that further reduces the amount of supply on the marketplace, making it exponentially more difficult for buyers, right? So it's not a good environment. We need to create more balance. And as soon as we do, well, it's not going to be as soon. It's going to take some time, right? We need units. We need construction. We need the announcement of big projects or something to that degree, right? And again, just haven't heard anything since the election, which doesn't surprise me either, unfortunately.
All right. So who else does it suck for? Well, we've got a lot of friends in the finance industry, of course. So lenders, banks, etc. And they've got it tough now too. You got to imagine, the market's in a fury right now. And so people come rushing into their broker and say, hey, I found something awesome. I got to buy it. We got to go subject free in 3 days. And so the pressure there and, just doing all the due diligence that the lenders obviously need to get their buyers in actual position to be pre-approved. And then you could imagine, with everything going over ask practically, imagine when the appraisals don't match. And that pressure, imagine you're a lender and you're like, great, you had something listed for 1.7 and you like what just happened yesterday, spent 2.2. Guess what? It appraised at 2. And now there's a 200K gap and you are on the hook for that in cash. That sucks.
Yeah.
Also what we're seeing now, because we are in a rising interest rate environment, we've got clients and we see the story out on the streets too. They have been shopping for 6 months, for example. And their fantastic low rate cannot be extended anymore because rates have gone up. And so because they've either not found what they want because there's very low inventory, or maybe they tried and they were outbid above their actual buying capacity. Well, guess what? That same house that they want to buy now, it's going to cost them more because the rate has now gone up.
If they can even get it anymore too.
And that's a tough conversation for the lenders to have too.
Well, you got to think the home price is going up. The ability to lend money is going down, creating a further spread, right? Making it more and more difficult to buy. I mean, that is the intention I think, to slow that price gap, right? But at the end of the day, unfortunately, you know, it's the end users, the people trying to buy homes for themselves, that get hurt the most, right? And that's just, again, a result of very poor policy decision making at the government levels.
Okay, so who else? What about our inspector friends? How does it suck for them?
Well, let's be honest. I mean, if there's been numerous times where I've been competing against 10 or more buyers at any given time on a particular home. And, you know, I've been able to actually schedule or get a hold of an inspector who can do the inspection. And then I call the seller. I'm like, hey, how about, you know, Monday? Oh, no, Monday's full. We've got, you know, 4 inspectors. Okay, well, how about Tuesday? Oh, no, there's another 3 going there. So we can't get your guy in. Well, okay. You know, they'll try and make it work. At the same time, you ask yourself, well, does the home need an 8th inspection? Right. And then you've got all of these people who are then deciding, well, you know what? Actually, maybe I'm not going to inspect the home. I'll just see if the rest of those 8 go, then I'll write my offer too. And so you see inspectors getting pinched and pushed out of deals where they are typically supposed to be there to help protect you. And not only are they getting squeezed out, but the risk for the buyer on the other side goes up. So it's a double-edged sword for inspections.
Yeah, and I think too now, especially in the last few months, everybody really kind of recognizes that you're not winning an offer. You're not buying a home without doing a subject-free offer. And so, you know, even recently, I had a client go in, we pre-inspected, we went up against 10 offers. We were the only inspection. People are like, I don't even
Wow.
care. I'll just save the 400 or 500 bucks because I don't have a choice either way. And clearly we don't advise that, but I am seeing it rampantly. So for inspectors, they're actually losing work in a busy environment because people are like, whatever, I'll save the money because I'll probably just lose anyway. Um, there's a lot of
Yeah.
last minute bookings, of course, and there's a ton of cancellations as well because maybe people are
Yeah.
fired up and then they're like, actually, maybe I don't want to spend $2 million on this practical teardown,
Yeah.
so they change
Or
their mind last minute. Like,
yeah. Or again, they don't want to be the 8th inspection, right?
exactly.
You know, and they find out, or again, they find out that there's now 20 offers coming in on this property, and they just go,
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
leave it. I
Cancel it.
don't, yeah.
So it's tough. It's hard to plan your life to book your work schedule in that environment when things just cancel day of sometimes, it's
Yeah.
brutal out there.
Yeah.
Okay. Lastly here, what about the lowly realtor? It can't possibly suck for realtors in this environment. Everything's easy, right?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, when we started the conversation, at the end of the day, you know, we typically our clients, we're dealing with their emotions for in large part, right? Primarily, I would say. So, you know, if you've been a friend to somebody who's been trying to buy a house and you can see the despair on their face, imagine being the one who has to message them that, right, and keep telling them that, and trying to continuously provide them hope. um, it's brutal. It's brutal. You know, we would much rather be, you know, having clients excited in a balanced market where they really have a real shot at buying a home. um, that's just not the case now, right? um, you know, on the flip side, you know, if you're representing um, a listing, right, and you've got 20 offers that come in on that, well, you're going to have one great conversation and 19 that are terrible, right? And that's the other side of it, is the amount of disappointment that you got to deliver. um, so it's real, and you know, I I think about it at night. It keeps me awake. So
Yeah, it's very tough in this environment too when you're doing everything right, quote unquote, with preparing your client and being able to go subject free with full due diligence done in advance, and you comp the property and you're like, look, 2 months ago, the neighboring home, for example, sold for 1.6. The market's up. I know it's crazy to hear this, but we're gonna have to go 1.7 subject free because that's above what the market says. But let's do this. Let's get you that home. Offer day, 10 offers come in and it goes for 1.9. And you're like, what do you mean? Like,
yeah,
there's zero data that supports so many of the sale prices that are happening right now, and it's very hard to advise your client correctly when there's these like Hail Mary offers that are being thrown out, because maybe that's the person who just lost 31 times and they are This is it. It's
Done.
this or nothing. And
Yeah.
so you're like, well, sorry, I had no way of knowing that was going for 1.9 because there's zero metrics that say it could. And
Well,
that's
and
tough too.
you're also not going to get a shot at that, as the buyer's agent, right? Because let's be honest, if you're selling a property and everyone's coming in at 1.7, 1.75, 1.725, because that's where all the data is, and then somebody comes in at 1.9, the seller's not going to go back to 1.725 or 1.75. They're going to take the 1.9. You're never going to get your chance, right? And that's where it gets really frustrating because a lot of us are dealing with lenders, right? In terms of what people can borrow. Every now and then there's the buyer who gets, cash buying, but that's rare, right? And so, when you have to deal with this I'm not going to arbitrarily put my clients in financial risk just because, they want to really win this home. They'll be stuck in it for 30 years if that's the case, right? And that's terrible. I mean, let's be honest. There was that home that I put up on my social media about 2 weeks ago. It was Main and 22nd, I think, Main and 21st. Is a 100-year-old home, 2,100 square feet, something like that. I saw the foundation at the back was actually buckling. North facing backyard, not perfect in many ways. Listed for 2.2 million and sold for 2.910, right? Like 712,000 or something over the list price. And the closest comparable was 2.4 million.
That sucks.
I don't know what you tell your clients at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. So not the most uplifting episode, but a bit of a real one here because it's tough. It is literally brutal. It literally sucks out there for many. And again, this isn't looking for sympathy. This is kind of more being empathetic and sharing some stories about what we see daily. Because we certainly would love to see something a little bit more balanced out here and soon.
And I think that's got to come from policy decisions. It's got to come from the government has to start creating more homes. If they're going to keep bringing people in, which is fine, then we need more homes. We need to balance the market on the other side, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's just that simple.
Fair. All right, everyone. Well, not to discourage anyone, we do have clients that are succeeding in every market. So if even after that conversation, you're still considering selling or buying, we'd love to help. Please reach out to us at thevancouverlife.com and have an awesome day. Thanks so much.